Hello, everybody, and welcome back here. We're in the midst of a very, very important section of the text of A Course in Miracles, which quite naturally applies to every section of the text of A Course in Miracles. The one that you are looking at right now is the most important one. And they're all saying the same thing because this course is holographic. What I mean by that is that every single sentence contains the entirety of the thought system, all of it. So here we are in chapter 8, section 7, the body as a means of communication. And we're involved right now in a series of really important conversations about this communication mechanism, this organism, this thing that we take to be us, the physical body. It's not us. You're not a body. If you're hearing this for the first time, you're about to hear it a second time. You are not a body. A third time, you are not a body. This is an idea that's central to A Course in Miracles. So much so that the refrain, I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me, occupies 20 consecutive lessons in the workbook for students, namely lessons 201 through 220, which is a review period with that refrain, rhyme scheme included, so we remember it as a central theme. You're not a physical body, and you know this to be true. You do. How can I assert this? Well, you're interested in spirituality, which means at some point, whether you remember it or not, or whether you were consciously aware of the choice that you made at the time or not, you heard the call to awaken, which goes out to all of us, and you answered it, which is the beautiful thing. So I thank you for answering the call. It's this sense that we all have that there's more to it than this. There's more to it than simply this 80% sack of water and squishy guts that of themselves mean absolutely nothing. We appear to be here encased in this thing, but we know that there's more to it than that. There's more to it than simply eating, sleeping, drinking water, going to the bathroom, and modernly checking our email, which can take lots of time. But there's more to it than this. And we know this, so here we are on the spiritual path. It's what has us on the path in the first place. Whatever your spiritual practice looks like, whatever traditions you practice, if any, right? It's what has you watching this. So let's continue. You are not a body, and you know this to be true. So what do we do when we appear to be here? And when we look in the mirror, we see something that looks similar to this, that we call a human being. Yeah. What do we do when we appear to be here? Well, the highest and best, and indeed the only really good and proper use of the body is to give it over to our inner teacher for his purposes. In other words, for the purposes of healing the mind, for extending love to our brother. Forgiveness, true forgiveness of the Son of God, for extending love. Let our inner teacher run the show and direct this, direct its use. as a means of communication of the love of God. Now, as we saw in the last video, the ego views the body as a means of attack. It does. It views it as a means of attack and of getting stuff here in the world. It sees your brother as another body, a separate body that's in competition with you for what we have decided are scarce, limited resources. We limit and further limit ourselves and pit ourselves in these bizarre ideas referred to as economic systems, where we appear to be in competition with our brother for what we deem to be scarce resources or slice of the pie. And we become convinced that our brother's going to get our slice unless we preemptively strike, unless we act first with vile aggression sometimes. And we call this economics. This is where we appear to find ourselves, no matter where you live in the world. The ego sees the body as an attack device. The Holy Spirit, on the other hand, sees it as a means to communicate the love of God. Use it to share the Holy Spirit with your brother. Use it to share the love of God with your brother. Extend the love of God to every living thing. That's what we're invited to do. And we have a choice as to how we see the body. We have a choice between the ego and the Holy Spirit, between truth or illusion. Yeah, we do. We have this choice in the present moment. And what we choose determines how we see everyone else, because there is no one else. When we side with the ego, we see a world of separation, guilt, blame, hatred, and fear. 8 billion individual self-sustaining survival units looking out for number one. Sometimes cooperating, but always suspicious. And when we side with the Holy Spirit, when we choose love instead of fear, we allow truth to be just as it is, and how we view everyone in the world is very different. When you look upon your brother as competition, you reinforce the idea of separation. When you look upon your brother as yourself, you see your brother as wholly worthy of love. This is why the practice of true forgiveness is central to A Course in Miracles. There is no separation of any kind. So when you condemn your brother, whom do you condemn? Yourself. So when you forgive your brother, when you extend love to your brother, to whom do you extend love? Whom do you forgive? Yourself, of course. Your brother is you. And if your brother is you, and we see all of these apparently separate bodies running around, your brother can't be a body, can he? You can't be one either, and you're not. You are not. It makes no difference what biology textbooks tell us. It makes no difference what our societies tell us or what our parents told us when we were growing up. We've all been conditioned to think that this is life itself, but it's not life itself. And we know this. Of itself, the body is nothing. So the only good and proper use that it even has here in the dream is to extend love. So use it for truth, and you see it truly as a means of communicating the love of God to your brother. Now, right now, this appears to be a form that you can relate to. When something lands for you, and I hope that something has already landed for you, if not, stick around, as it may. It's your inner teacher speaking to you. Anything that resonates from this conversation or any other conversation, anything that resonates is your inner teacher speaking to you. The call that you answered back, who knows when, whether you were consciously aware of it or not, goes out to all of us. The call goes out to all of us, all of the time. You listened, and because you're here, interested in this particular course, that tells me with great certainty that you've listened more than once. And of course, there appear to be people in the world who are not listening, and right now they're not. Doesn't mean they won't. Of course they will. That's only a matter of time. And that's what time is for all of us to answer the call and awaken. That's what it's for. Because we've never left our source, there is no linear time. That's simply an idea. So is space. Because there's only perfect oneness, your brother's not separate from you in space nor time. There is only perfect oneness. In fact, the definition of heaven in A Course in Miracles is simply the awareness of perfect oneness. We're one with God. One. And it is okay. It's more than okay. In fact, it's to be expected here on the path for you to hear this and not believe it. No problem. Happens to all of us. It's expected for you to hear that we're one with God. Who are you? And get freaked out by that, because we've all been conditioned to think that we're not, that we're separate. And some of us have been conditioned to believe that we're sinners, miserable, dirty, rotten, scumbag little sinners running around deserving of punishment and death. Yes, for having offended the Almighty so much. Well, God doesn't have an ego to be offended, and there is no sin. Let the ego run from that one. This is true. If there's only perfect oneness, there's no separation. How can anyone offend anyone else? There is no one else. Only God is. There is only perfect oneness. And if you don't believe it, no problem. I invite you to take a look at paragraph 6, where there are a couple of phrases that may help to drive this point home. He of who you are, God of who you are, it says it right there. I am not making this up. His name is yours. Also, in the same paragraph, paragraph 6, again, chapter 8, section 7, paragraph 6. His name is yours, he of whom you are. You are one with God. Ideas leave not their source. Thoughts remain in the mind of the thinker, and we are the thought of God. Where are we, having never left the mind of the thinker, having never left our source, capital S? Exactly. I invite you to allow the sheer simplicity of truth to permeate your mind, to suffuse it completely, such that there's suddenly no more delusion. This is why one of the most powerful prayers that you could ever utter here is the prayer to allow truth. Ask for help if you need to, and then allowing truth to be just as it is and let it dawn of itself. Boom. We're getting out of our own way, setting the ego aside. It's very powerful. And when you invite your inner teacher to run your entire experience, it's very powerful. If you don't believe me, do it, but really do it and prove to yourself that these teachings are true. This is how we learn, is by doing it. We do this. We allow our inner teacher to take the reins. There's a famous saying, Jesus, take the wheel. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In doing this, we're setting the ego aside. And the car will not be wrecked. In so doing, there is often a tremendous resistance because it feels like you're giving yourself over to an outside power. There is no outside power. Your inner teacher is inner. This is why we're referring to the Holy Spirit here as your inner teacher, because the Holy Spirit is part of your mind. You're not ceding anything to an outside power because there is no outside. So we return to these ideas again and again and allow the sheer simplicity of it to permeate our minds. Now we'll return to email for sure. I mean, that's coming up. I have to do that too in about 15 minutes. So, we end a video like this, or we end a practice period, we end a meditation session, and we go back to daily life. But we go back to daily life with a completely different point of view, with a completely different mindset, and with the confidence and the knowledge that this isn't real and this isn't who you are. The Son of God is not finite. The Son of God is not destined to run around and do his or her level best to make as much money as we can in the 80 to 90 years of linear time that appear to be here for us, if we're lucky, and possibly, as we're all aware, much less. This isn't who you are. The Son of God is not limited. The Son of God, rather, is unlimited. You're one with God. There are no limits. There are no limits, and there's no separation. So along the way, it is expected that resistance will come up. The fact that we're not all completely awake in God, and there still appear to be 8 billion of us on this spinning ball of rock, is testament to the stubbornness of this resistance, isn't it? But you've heard the call. So when you get resistance, understand that it is the ego that's resistant. It's the ego that's afraid, and there is no ego. It is a simple mistake. There's no separation of any kind. The ego is the thought of separation. It does not exist, and it never did. Ideas leave not their source. You've never left your source. Where are you? What are you? Who are you? Yes, exactly. All right. Questions and comments are always welcome here. I really appreciate all of you tuning in. And what I appreciate more than any of the subscriptions and the likes and the comments, the discussion, all of that, which don't get me wrong, I definitely do appreciate all of that. The most important thing is your commitment and dedication to your spiritual practice. And there is no close second to that. This is clearly the most important thing, is your dedication and commitment to your spiritual practice. This is the highest and best offering you can give anyone, anywhere, at any time. Period, hands down. It's much more important than service in kind, whatever that may look like. It's much more important than money. It's your practice, your dedication and commitment to awakening. That is the most important offering you can ever make. So the fact that you've watched until the end of this video is testament to that commitment. And for that, I thank you. Now, if you've not subscribed, here's the subscription button right here. It's this arrow in the corner of your screen. Go ahead and click on that and join us here. We have a growing international community, and any questions and comments that you may have about this course or about spirituality in general are more than welcome right here. So yeah, go ahead and subscribe and join us. And I will see you again on the next video. Thank you so much for joining me.